Hi there guys, Diesel Johnny Boy here and Jasmine. Hello Jasmine. Jasmine's come to check out what's going on. Haven't you, Jazz? It's a nice sunny day actually. You're outside in the sunshine, Jasmine. She's just checking the British Seagull. So anyway, that's the video this morning. I'm just doing a quick video on my British Seagull project. This little British Seagull is it's a 40 featherweight, which is probably one of the smallest ones that they do. I mean, they did too. There's the common cylinder block for the 40 series is this 64cc block, and they sort of regulated the power outputs by adjustments on the carburetors, gearbox ratios, and sizes of the propeller. I'm no Seagull expert. I literally only got into this like a couple of weeks ago, but that's another story. But yeah, so this little 40 featherweight, I bought this on Facebook Marketplace for £25. It was all more or less complete, which is handy, and it did actually run amazingly. I got it back home, gave it a bit of a check over. I had to clean the points, and then it started up and ran. Only ran it for a few seconds because it was didn't have any water. But I like to sort of give these things a bit of a once over. And it was pretty old. It's probably in excess of 50 years of age. So this is just a bit of an overview. If you want comprehensive videos on repairing individual bits and pieces of the British Seagull, there's this great Irish guy called Coastal Works, and I've studied quite a lot of his videos, and he's basically the British Seagull expert on YouTube, and he'll tell you everything you need to know about taking them apart and putting them back together. He's a really good guy. He's got a really nice Irish accent as well. It's quite nice listening to him and watching his videos. So I've studied quite a lot of those videos in the evening. A sad git, aren't I, watching British Seagull videos. But no, it's given me a good insight in how these things operate, and what you can do and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And there's quite a lot of important things on there which you should note. Otherwise you could do some quite bad damage to them, and you could basically wreck it if you don't carry out a few procedures and follow a few basics or methodology when you're taking it and putting it back together again. I'm just going to go through a quick few basic things which sort of summarises the dismantling of the British Seagull. I'll start with the engine. Now, that all comes off quite well. The tubes, that's the exhaust tube. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I just want to talk about the cylinder head really, because go on to Coastal Works if you want to see it in detail. But that's obviously the power head. That comes off quite easy. It's just a couple of bolts there which connects to the drive shaft, but it's the cylinder head. Can give people a bit of grief, because basically when you get these things, most of them are pretty ancient, and they've got to be like most of the older ones, could be only 50, 60, 70 years of age, and they've probably not been touched. So it does actually say on the cylinder head, do not remove. As you can see, I've removed it, which is just as well, because it's a water-cooled engine, and these are the water galleries here. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and the water comes up underneath, comes up through that pipe there. It's sort of pushed up by a little impeller. That little impeller pushes the water up. It's pretty basic stuff, a little hard plastic impeller on the drive shaft. It sort of shoves the water up a pipe, and it kind of then goes around the cylinder and then exits through a little hole there and just goes back down. Imagine that's going to be like that. It's a horizontal piston, vertical crankshaft, horizontal piston, so the water just trickles out. You need to have good flow there, because obviously it would overheat otherwise, and you might think you've got water flowing through, and often maybe they're okay, but on the two I've had, they've both been pretty crudded up. In these galleries here, you've got obviously the 4 galleries, they all interconnect. They were really crudded up, and it's like a mixture of rust and silt, and if it's been using salt water, salty, crusty silt, crud, I don't know what it is, but it goes off like flipping concrete. And literally, you've got to chip away at it with a screwdriver. I mean, these were utterly blocked up. And you wouldn't even know they were there. There's a bit of a dark shadow of where they were against the colour of the steel. But yeah, you have to basically gut it a bit carefully, but it is pretty rock hard though. So to tap away with a little screwdriver, a little hammer, just tap away at it, be very careful because you don't want to start damaging any of the metal around the cylinder or any of the, you don't want to sort of burring it up. So yeah, you've got to take your time. You can take an hour or two of patience. It's like being like an archaeologist excavating a fossil or something. You've got to pick away at it, chip away at it, and every now and again sort of turn it upside down and rattle it out. It all drops out and you'll see eventually have a little pile of rusty crud. So that's a really important thing to do. Check the water flow. I mean, even if you got water flow, I mean, I'm not saying everyone should take their cylinder heads off. It's up to you. I'm a bit of a maniac for taking things apart. I can't help myself. So yeah, but getting the cylinder head off can be a little bit problematic because these nuts, these bolts, they sit in the galleries, so they're going to get wet. So they've been in there for many, many years, and in some cases they can be pretty obstinate to get out. So you need to, if you find, it's best even to put heat on them, a bit of heat on them really. Don't take any shots. If they snap off, you've got a pain in the arse. Try to drill them out. You might not even be able to drill them out. It will destroy the block probably. If they snap off flush, unless you've got a lot of patience and a good pillar drill and you know what you're doing, it'd be a nightmare trying to drill them out. It is doable, but you've got to be a bit of an expert. I wouldn't want to attempt it myself. I never have much luck drilling out studs. So my advice is to heat the head of obviously the cylinder head will be on there. I'll put it the right way. So obviously you'll have the cylinder head on there, you'll have the nuts in there. So heat the head of the nut up and heat the sides up where they go. Give it a bit of heat, maybe 5 minutes on each one, on the head of the nut, a bolt, sorry, and the sides where they screw in the threaded part. So go around doing that on all of those, and then with a bit of luck they'll come out. I've had 2 of these engines I've dismantled recently, they're the only 2 I've got, and they all come out. This one actually, on this one, it came out relatively easily. On the other one, my 40 plus, it took a bit more grunt and I was getting a bit worried that one was going to shear off, so plenty of heat on that, and they should come out. Like I say, take your time, watch Coastal Works as well, I highly advise his videos. So once you've got your cylinder head off, so then that's all cool, then you can guard it with your cleaner. If they're all clean, then that's great, job done, you don't even put the head back on. It's a copper gasket, nice copper gasket. This one's pretty tidy actually. Excuse me. You can reuse these, which is handy, but you've got to anneal them, as I found out from one of Coastal Works' videos. I didn't know that you could anneal these things. I didn't know anything about that. So basically that is heating it up. So hold it with a pair of pliers, use a blowtorch, heat it up, and you'll see it gradually change colours. Heat it up both sides, and that kind of it softens the copper, because obviously it's gone hard over years, so you want a good tight seal when you put your head back on. So like I say, anneal your head gasket, so that's all nice, and it'll go like a greeny colour, I think mine went. Then put it to one side, let it cool down a bit, and you need to use a heat resistant gasket sealer as well. You do not want water getting into your piston in your barrel. So I've used this is what Coastal Works recommended, so I got myself some off eBay. Durco Das Original, must be German I suppose. Yeah, so that's what you use, or something similar to that. you just smear a little bit round. Don't put like, you know, icing a cake. Just put a little thin bed of it around, cut all round, get it all in round there, around the barrel, top of the barrel, you know, piston barrel, all round there, da-di-da-di-da, around there. Don't, you know, wipe it to keep it out the combustion chamber, the top of the piston, keep it out there. Also, obviously give it all a good clean first. I mean, I've had to sand this down with some emery paper. So you want nice clean surfaces on the barrel and the underside of the cylinder head. Get that all nice and clean and run your finger over, make sure there's no burrs or anything nasty sticking out. So then put your gasket sealer on. Put some also on the underside of the cylinder head. That's good. The cylinder head can only go one way, so you can't get that wrong. It's the fuel tank bolts, so that will always go the opposite end of the exhaust. So it can only go on one way. And also, a head gasket can only go on one way as well. Like that. I found that it's with the lettering facing down, because if you try to put the lettering facing up, that does not line up. So you've got to have the lettering, which they normally have, my two had lettering on them, face down, and that will line up nicely. So you've got your gasket sealer on there, got your gasket sealer on there, put your head back on, screw your bolts back in. I've used a bit of aluminium anti-seize paste. Put a bit of that on your threads and tighten that down. Don't tighten it down too hard, tighten it down very nice and evenly, maybe diagonally. Get them down all finger tight, then gradually bring the pressure up to torque it up a bit. And don't kill it when you tighten it down. Then leave it for 4 or 5 hours, and then that'll give the sealer time to go off the gasket. Then just nip it up a bit tight again. Apparently it's 18 foot-pounds, but in the Seagull handbook it says don't use a torque wrench, just do it in a kind of intuitive way, just feel it sort of tightens up. Don't kill it, it's only like only little bolts. If you're going crazy, you can snap those off and you'll be in trouble again. So there we go, that's that done. The other thing you need to attend to is the gearbox, because that's another area where you get a lot of crudding up. Let's get this gearbox over here. The little featherweight gearbox is a dinky affair. It's very small compared to the 40 plus. So that comes off. I've got this back on now. These can be a bit obstinate to get off as well, because again these have been on for donkey's years, potentially. So these have got Allen heads on them. The normal Seagull ones, they have a screw head. These ones actually came off all right. That separates. I'll just put this over here to show you guys. That is like the leg which comes down. That's your drive shaft comes down there. And then you've got your oops, put it the right way. Move that washing basket out the way. So there you go, that comes off from there. Another couple of screws in there. They can be a bit stubborn to get out. So again, you may have to apply some heat to get those out. So be careful again, a little bit of heat. Coastal Works, again, he's the man to go to on YouTube. He'll give you some good instruction on how to remove those. That top comes off there, then you'll have this off. You've got a drive shaft here, which is, that goes, you've got the, let me show you. That's the drive shaft that comes down through there. It's just a square bar, hollow. That comes down there and then that just locates on there. It's very simple. I have that's the pinion. I never removed one of those. Apparently you can smack them out, but I don't think they don't really wear out unless there's been some catastrophe and no one's used any oil in it. Again, with these little shaft, this here, well actually let me go. So you take this off, that's the crown wheel. There's a rubber seal here. It's like a little rubber washer. excuse me, that stops debris getting into the gearbox. Sort of basic grit oil seal. And this little brass collar keeps everything in. Now on my one, it was floating around like that. There's a roll pin that goes through there. That was completely missing, so I don't know what was going on, and there's a little bit of damage there on the casting. If I just take that off, you can see the little rubber seal there. That was missing as well, so I've got a new rubber seal. Should be okay. Rubber seal seems to be seating down all right. So normally you'd have a roll pin, then you tap that roll pin out, maybe with like a little punch or something, or an Allen key that fits the hole. Again, Coastal Works, he's the guy to go through. I'll show you that procedure. Then obviously you've got to take the propeller off obviously first. That comes off pretty easily. The propeller's held in with a spring. That's the drive spring, so that basically drives the propeller around. It's like a safety device. It will bend if your propeller hits something immovable, like the bed of the river. If you go into too shallow water, that will literally bend that bit of metal and it'll save damaging anything. So yeah, you get that off. That's the sound of a split pin through there, and a little washer. Again, Coastal Works, he's the guy to go to see. So yeah, so you take that out, and then gently tap that out, maybe with a copper hammer or something like that. Tap, 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 it'll just come out the back and you can withdraw it. And give it all a good clean inside. This one wasn't too bad, but often they can be pretty grim inside these things. There's a little plastic bung there, that's where you put the oil in or drain the oil out. Now someone's been a bit heavy-handed on my sea. Can you see that? I don't know what the hell's been going on there. They've distorted the thread on here. I can't even get it out at the moment because it's distorted the thread. It does rotate. It's a little bit difficult, but normally you'd have to put like a spanner. The side of a spanner will take that out. It's like a cross thread. So you just put like a spanner that fits in there, and then you can rotate. It can be a bit stubborn again. But yeah, you want to get the oil out of there. Clean all the crud out. It's a good idea because often these bits get neglected. These holes here where the water exits after it's been around the engine. No, is that right? Yeah. No, it's fine. That's where the water goes in. I beg your pardon. Water goes in there, and then it's thrown up by the impeller. If we have a look in here, that's where it goes up. The impeller's whizzing around in there. That's right. The impeller's in there. It's like a little plastic hard rotor, and it forces the water down through there and up this tube, which goes in there, and then that's just forced up into the engine. That goes on there like that into the engine, and that just pumps the water up into the engine, forces it up. It's quite crude but effective. That is the rotor here. Now this one here, that just locates on there. Mine's actually broken, so I'm quite glad I took this engine apart because there's a few little, obviously we've already gone over what was missing in the gearbox. That's cracked across there. These things do normally last a hell of a long time, but you can see something, it's got loose and it's dropped down a bit because it's not been gripping that very well. It's dropped down slightly and it started being chewed up. So that's not good, so I've ordered another one of those. This is a bit of a budget job. I didn't want to spend too much money on this one. So that's good. Again, use the anti-seize paste on these when you're putting it back together. That's got Allen headed bolts. I use stainless steel bolts on my other Seagull. I went up to town a bit. On this one, I'm just reusing what I've got. These bolts are pretty good actually, so that's cool. Carburetor's pretty simple. I'm keeping the throttle cable. It's a little bit manky, but it does work. Giving it a good clean, they're pretty basic. Again, Coastal Works, he's got some good videos if you want to change the needles. This one's running on a 10:1 fuel mixture. I've taken the magneto out. That just bolts in there with a couple of bolts, pretty easy. Word of warning on the cylinder head. Not the cylinder head, the flywheel. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to use like three-legged pullers or any sort of vehicle puller or lawnmower pullers, that is not, it's not designed to be removed using these sort of extractors. You will destroy it and crack it, break it. There is only one way to remove this really, and it's best to use two people. There's a bit of end float on here, so if one person literally holds that and lifts it off the ground slightly after you've loosened the nut on there. So first of all, loosen the nut with the flywheel in situ, get a person to hold it either side, and you literally smack that dome nut, screw that on quite tight again, and you've got to smack it quite hard with a lump hammer. There's no use giving it little taps, that'll do more harm than good. You've got to give it a good old stout whack, and then that'll free off the taper, because it's on like not quite a taper. So yeah, and it's probably a good idea, if you're not sure about when it was last taken apart, to soak, while the flywheel's in situation, soak around the keyway with some penetrating oil or paraffin or diesel, soak it around and leave that for overnight. Excuse me. And that'll probably hopefully seep down onto the shaft, and then when you whack it with the hammer, it'll pop up. You'd be surprised they pop up. This one, the 40 plus came off with one wallop. This one did require a little bit more than one, and we thought, oh my God, I don't hit it too many times, but it came off. But what is really important before you do the whacking business, you must have, this is really, really important, the piston at the lowest point. So if you've got your cylinder head on, take your plug out, poke a screwdriver or pencil in, make sure the piston is at the bottommost part of its stroke. Do not start hitting that nut if the piston's at the top of its stroke, because you've got less support and you could do some horrible damage. So that is really, really important. Piston at bottom of stroke, loosen nut, soak with penetrating oil, get an assistant to literally hold the side of the flywheel, whack nut with a club hammer, and it'll pop off. They do pop off. I mean, both of mine popped off all right, and these have been on for donkey's years. You can then get to the inners of it. Here's the coil. This one's one of the more modern ones, modern, 50 years old. It uses a wide pack coil, which is a bit more reliable than the old Villiers ones. Little round Villiers ones. They're fine, obviously, but they're getting really old and they're made of shellac and all sorts of problems you get with those. This all works okay. I've taken it out with the points in situ. Things that you need to do on these, there's where the the cable, the wire that goes to the contact breakers goes to a little hole there. Then it's just held up with a little little screw in there. Take that out and give that wire, the bare bit of wire is curled around, it's just nipped up with that screw. Give that a good clean, because they can get corroded. So you want all your electrics good. Make sure you clean that little wire up and then fast it again. Clean the points. Apparently, according to John at SOS, that's Save Our Seagulls. He's a great place. I'll mention him in a minute. He says you very rarely have to replace the points. They literally, he never seems to sell any. He says they last forever. But you probably will have to give them a bit of a clean with a bit of emery paper, because they do get a bit tarnished, and if it's been left and neglected, then it will need a good old clean up. And you can just put it all back together again and set the gap to any thou. Again with the HT lead, that's where it locates in there. There's the contact point down the HT lead. Give that a good clean, scratch it off with a little screwdriver, make sure you've got a good point there. That's where the HT lead goes in, locates in there, make sure that's clean. Clean the other end that goes on the spark plug. You can get new HT leads. I got a new HT lead for my other one, but this one, I'm on a bit of a budget, so that does actually work. So I'll just give it a good old de-rust, give that a good clean. Fuel tank, this is one of the brass ones. I'll give it a bit of a clean up and a paint up, that's all right. They're always dented, look at the state of that. I don't know what people do with these things. They get chucked about all over the place. You can't really get the dents out, and to be honest, I'm not really bothered. I quite like it, but it gives it its sort of vintage age, a few dents. As long as it doesn't leak, it doesn't bother me. I haven't polished this. I'll be giving it a bit of a clean. I want it to look a bit old. I did clean the flywheel back to bare metal though, because it had like that hammerite gold paint on. So yeah, that's interesting. The transom. That's the transom bracket. These are always really tarnished and manky. Now this one, I dropped him in a bucket of caustic soda basically, left him in there overnight, gave it a good scrub. It's made of bronze, I think. Come up really clean, didn't it, Bab? There we go. There goes my wife, my long-suffering wife. This is the kitchen table. I did put a cloth down. But yeah, that's the transom. That's come up really nice, and I give it a good scrub after with the caustic. So watch out with caustic soda, it's nasty stuff. So tie a bit of wire around it and lower it in it gingerly, and wear gloves. Don't want that stuff splashing on your clothes or in your eyes. So wear gloves, take precautions of all these things. 24 hours in a bucket of caustic soda, it come up like new. Give it a scrub with a little wire brush. And I sprayed it with a coat of lacquer. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do, but that's the transom retaining pin. Keep hold of that. You don't want you to see that. Keeps your seagull. That keeps it, locks it in. There's a couple of little tank washers I've made. They literally sit on the underneath. There's a couple. There's the bolts that come out of the tank. They just go on there like that. Sort of give it a bit of cushioning. Throttle cables, you can buy new throttle cables. All the parts, nearly everything you can get from John Williams at SOS, Saving Our Seagulls. He's a great guy. So just Google Saving Our Seagulls, or Save Our Seagulls, Saving Our, I don't save one or the other. Just put in Saving Our Seagulls. Is it Saving Old Seagulls? I'm not sure, can't remember. But anyway, SOS Seagulls, and you'll get his website up. He can supply everything. He's a really good guy. He knows his stuff. He'll give you good advice. Get yourself parts manuals. Actually, let me show you my manuals. Oh no, there they are. Get yourself a couple of manuals if you like. It's always a good idea. We've got the workshop manual. Saving Old Seagulls, that's what it's called here. There's the number, look. Saving Old Seagulls. 01621778859. John Williams, he's the guy to go to for your spare parts. He's a very knowledgeable chap. So yeah, own the spare parts book and the workshop manual. Handy bits of handy things to have. The only thing that's broken on my Seagull, this is the engine lug mount. So when you finish using the Seagull and if you want to stop the engine, you can hook it at 45 degrees and it clips back out the water, so the propeller's sort of sticking out the water. But that's snapped off there. So, but I've just actually messaged John to see if he's got a spare one. You can buy them on eBay, but they're like 15 quid. So if I have to get one, I'll have to get one, but it's nearly the price of the whole bloody Seagull. But there you go. I think that's about it really. I'm going on a bit of a long time, aren't I? God, it's 28 minutes. Look, that's enough for now. Oh, just oil. This is for the older Seagulls. They use a 140. EP 140, this is AG 140, either one will be all right. So yeah, that's what goes in the gearbox. Don't put the lighter oil in. That goes. The newer Seagulls apparently use an EP90, but mine are all old and they use the 140 grade oil, which is. Don't put grease in the gearbox. Don't be tempted to put grease in. You need to change it every 10 hours as well. It's normal for a bit of water to get in there. So yeah. Another thing, when you're taking that apart, there's a little thrust washer in there. Sometimes it sticks and it might fall out and you'll lose it. That keeps the sort of float at the right amount. Just, I can't, it's a bit difficult to move. There's a little bit of backwards and forwards play, just hear that. But that was missing on this one as well. So whoever took this one apart, they were a bit of a brute. They bashed the end of that. They didn't put the roll pin back in. They didn't put the thrust washer back in. So I'm glad I took it apart. And that been bashing and whizzing around. That's probably what cracked the casing. Also check your piston and check your barrel. This one's nice, there's no cracks in it. Yeah, so that'll be back together soon. I was thinking of maybe painting that red for a bit of fun. But yeah, oh, one other thing, I tell you about the fuel taps. My videos are terrible, aren't they? I keep forgetting things. These are really easy to replace, the little corks in there. That comes out, you undo that little grub screw there, take this little thing out, and then you see that there, you drive that out with a pin or like a nail. Just put it on top of support it in a vise, then drive that out, then the little thing comes out with a cork on it, and you can replace the corks at like a 5-minute job. So yeah, that's simple. That's simple to replace. You can even make the corks yourself out of a wine bottle cork, or you can buy a few of them on eBay for a few quid. These often leak. You can resurrect them by boiling them in water, but I've replaced that one because it was pretty beyond its sell-by date. I'll just finish off the video by showing you my 40 plus. It's just out here. I finished this 40 plus. Let's have a quick look at it. This one, a friend got this one for me, £20 this one was. There she is. So this is a bigger gearbox than the featherweight. So this one's all been dismantled. It's got new, I went to town on this one a bit, it's got all new stainless steel bolts holding it in. Stainless steel screws there. I took the head off this and the barrel, so it's got all nice new stainless steel bolts on it. There they are. That's very, very swish. I like that. I put the a decal on it. I think you probably meant to put that. I should have cut this in half, I think, and put the Seagull thing along there. And then I'd never used one of these water transfer things before. I messed up the eye, but it made it look a bit old-fashioned, so it's all right. I got a new throttle cable. Yeah, I spent a few quid on getting a few bits and pieces for this. It's got a new HT lead as well I put on it. Nice new HT lead. I haven't got this one on a boat yet. I'm going to take this one out soon, give it a go. I didn't even, when I bought the Seagulls, I didn't even have a boat. I bought a little dinghy actually. I got the Seagull bug. So thank you to Coastal Works, John Williams SOS, and Anthony, who's on the on Facebook. You can go to his a Seagull page on Facebook, and if you look on there, Anthony started that. He's a good guy. He got this Seagull for me. Yeah, and that's about it really. I've probably forgotten some things, but it's just a bit of fun. They're lovely little engines to work on. Just follow good practice on Coastal Works about removing head bolts and removing the cylinder head, removing the flywheel. Don't use an extractor. Loosen that nut, get someone to hold it, wallop that, pops off, bob's your uncle. And this one's a 1971 model, but that starts on the first pull now. It runs really nice. Anyway guys, look, that's enough of me. I hope you're all well, and I'll catch you next time. Over and out.